Hello and welcome to Granada Reports, live with the latest across the northwest.
Hello there. On the programme this evening.
After the death of 2-year-old Awab Ishaq, the Housing Secretary demands an end to the scandal of shoddy substandard homes.
We want to restore the right of everyone in this country, whatever their race or cultural background, to live somewhere warm, decent, safe and secure.
The man who claimed he'd killed Katie Kenyon in an axe-throwing accident admits to her murder.
We talk to farmers feeling the pinch as inflation hits a 40-year high.
Hello, friendly mate. How are you?
How one young football fan got the surprise of his life when his idol tipped up at training.
And I'll have your weather forecast, which is going to be set to be a bit of a wet one. A yellow warning in force for up to 70 to 80 millimetres of the wet stuff. All the details coming up before the end of the programme.
Thank you for your company. Well, first tonight, and managers of a mouldy home that caused the death of a 2-year-old boy in Rochdale have been called modern-day slumlords who are paid more than the Prime Minister.
A coroner found Awab Ishaq died after exposure to black mould that his parents had repeatedly complained about in their housing association flat. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, told MPs in the Commons that there are systemic problems with the leadership of Rochdale Borough-wide Housing.
Well, there are calls for its chief executive, Gareth Swarbrick, to stand down. He was paid £170,000 in 2020, the year Awab died. Our correspondent, Rob Smith, has this report.
Happy to play in fresh air, but every time Awab Ishaq went home, it was to a mouldy flat which was killing him. The landlord's failure to remove it was a dereliction of duty, said the government today. A minister demanding consequences for a housing association boss who earns more than the Prime Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker.
Michael Gove told the Commons it was everyone's duty to call out any past prejudice against the toddler's family.
The apparent attempts by Rochdale Borough-wide Housing to attribute the existence of mould to the actions of Awab's parents was beyond insensitive and deeply unprofessional. I've already been in touch with the Chair and the Chief Executive of Rochdale Borough-wide Housing to demand answers, to explain to me why a tragedy like Awab's case was ever allowed to happen, and to hear what steps they are now undertaking immediately to improve the living conditions of the tenants for which they are responsible.
Too many families in overcrowded, damp, mouldy, squalid conditions and disproportionately likely to be BAME families in poverty. This doesn't just have a heavy social cost. The NHS in England already spends £1.3 billion every year treating preventable illnesses caused by cold and damp.
On the Rochdale estate, where a coroner said a lack of effective ventilation caused the harmful mould, a mum-to-be spoke anonymously with ITV News today. She says she's repeatedly painted over fungus, including in a room where she'll no longer sleep because of it. She's worried after the 2-year-old's death and about advice from the Housing Association.
I say, look, how bad is my flat? And I sent all the pictures before I painted, before, everything, and it's still not making any difference. They still say you can open the window to get the nice fresh air and it will help you. The damp will go away.
Rochdale Borough-wide Housing told us they understand her concerns. Work to her flat scheduled as a priority. They say they've inspected every property here for damp and mould and are spending £1.2 million installing ventilation. They add they support diverse communities across the town and are learning hard lessons from Awab's death. The latter phrase hasn't impressed a tenants' union.
Hard learning should have been done many, many years ago. It shouldn't need a coroner to tell them that there are issues with mould on their watch.
The death of a young boy days after his birthday will now, the government say, lead to tougher inspections and potentially unlimited fines over future housing issues. Rob Smith, ITV News, Rochdale.
Well, the Housing Ombudsman says Awab's death comes amid a dramatic increase in the cases of damp and mould affecting homes across our region. I spoke to him a short time ago about why tenants' concerns are often ignored and who he holds responsible.
The responsibility rests with the landlord. They have the relationship with the resident. And it's absolutely right that if there is a report about damp and mould, that the landlord is proactive in its response. And what that means is it needs to understand what the causes might be for damp and mould. Sometimes that can be complex, but it needs to get to the bottom of that. And it also needs to offer really effective communication with residents who can be really profoundly distressed by the circumstances in which they're living, and they'll be worried about the impact that it will have on them and potentially their family.
Is the bottom line that at the moment there are some landlords who don't want to deal with issues like mould because they don't want to foot the bill?
Yeah, I think there's been a 40-year practice in the sector to initially say, well, look, it's the lifestyle of the resident. It's somehow choices that the resident's making that's leading to damp and mould. And I think that's shifting blame onto the resident. I think that's profoundly unfair. And I think that's a practice that has got to change. And it's something which we have been saying for some time now as an ombudsman, that landlords need to be more proactive. They need to take a zero tolerance approach, and they need to recognise the responsibilities that they have as landlords to address this issue and not shift blame onto residents unfairly.
And Mr. Blakeway, what should our viewers do if they do have concerns about the accommodation that they're currently living in?
Well, clearly, if residents have concerns about their accommodation, if they feel a repair needs to be doing, they should put in a request to the landlord. If they're a social tenant, they can make a complaint, and if they're dissatisfied with the response to that complaint, they can bring it to us as an ombudsman for us to conduct an independent, impartial investigation. If you're a private tenant, obviously, again, make that request for something, make that complaint if you feel it's not dealt with properly. Unfortunately, for private tenants, our powers don't extend to the private rented sector, so they may need to go to an advice agency, they may need to seek legal advice to see what they can do.
OK, Richard Blakeway, many thanks indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next tonight, a man from Burnley who claimed he killed his ex-girlfriend in an axe-throwing accident has changed his plea and admitted to her murder.
Katie Kenyon went missing in April. Her body was found a week later in a makeshift grave in the forest of Bowland.
Today at court, the officer leading the investigation described her murder as barbaric and said Andrew Burfield had pre-planned it to an extent he'd never seen before. Jennifer Buck reports.
A happy, loving mum of 2 children with her life ahead of her. Killed by a cruel, vindictive man who meticulously planned her murder. Today, the police officer who led the investigation into Katie Kenyon's death described both the victim and her killer.
Andrew Burfield's a man who's elected to run a trial, despite the overwhelming evidence in this case. Not only of the fact that Andrew Burfield has barbarically and violently killed Katie in this instance, he has also pre-planned what he was going to do to an extent that I have never seen in my entire police service.
New pictures released today show the van Burfield used to drive to the forest of Bowland and dig a grave for Katie Kenyon the day before he would return with her for a picnic. The axe he initially said was used for a game, but was in fact used to inflict 12 wounds to her head. And after leaving Katie in a shallow grave, police believe he left a drinks can hung on a tree as a marker for where he buried her. After just 2 days of evidence, the final twist in the trial here today. Andrew Burfield rearraigned on the murder charge, and when asked how he would plead, it was a clear guilty from him. That's been welcomed by both the family and the police.
I just hope that Stace's guilty plea gives the opportunity for the family now to understand they have got justice and to bring closure in this instance.
While police were combing the forest in the week-long search for Katie, Burfield worked to cover his tracks, sending messages from her phone to her family. Police found what was left of her mobile in the fireplace at his house after he burnt it.
With 3 weeks previous to her murder, he had written messages that he would go on to send to her family and to her children, knowing that his intention was to kill her.
Andrew Burfield will be sentenced for the murder of Katie Kenyon at Preston Crown Court tomorrow morning. Jennifer Buck, ITV News in Preston.
Well, in other news today, and Cristiano Ronaldo says the death of his newborn son was the most difficult moment of his life. His partner Georgina gave birth to twins in April, but while his daughter survived, his son died. It's the latest to emerge from an explosive TV interview to air tonight, where he criticises his club, Manchester United.
Bosses at the Jacobs Cracker Factory at Aintree say they are open to talks after workers went on a full-time strike. 750 staff have walked out indefinitely in a row over pay. The site at Aintree produces cream crackers, club biscuits and Twiglets.
And many congratulations to Salford's Paralympic champion Kadina Cox, who picked up an OBE from the King today. Kadina was an athlete and cyclist, was the first Briton to win gold in 2 different sports at the same Paralympics. The honour was presented at Windsor Castle for services to sport. Today's investiture was the first held by Charles since he became king in September.
That is one fab hat she has as well.
Yeah, many congratulations to her.
Next, an asylum seeker who claims he's been subjected to inhuman and degrading treatment at a Serco-run hotel in Stockport is currently in his 3rd week on hunger strike.
Yes, Stockport Council have confirmed a scabies outbreak at the hotel and say they've written to the Home Office with their concerns.
The man on hunger strike has now been taken to hospital and he's spoken to us exclusively from his hospital bed. Our reporter Will Tullis has the story.
Waste left in corridors, a scabies outbreak and mistreatment by staff. These are the conditions asylum seekers claim they're forced to live in at a Stockport hotel. They came to the UK in hope of a better life, but for many, that hope is fading.
I am on hunger strike, accepting only fluids, electrolytes and vitamins.
Hassan, whose name and voice we have changed, has now gone 14 days without food. He's protesting what he calls poor conditions and treatment by Serco, the Home Office contractor that runs the hotel. He was taken to hospital a few days into his strike, and from his hospital bed, he's speaking out for the first time.
I am seeking to end or at least reduce the harm caused to my family by the inhumane and degrading treatment to which we and others have been subjected by Serco.
Hassan is one of over 100,000 asylum seekers in the UK waiting for an asylum claim to be processed. This comes after widespread criticism of the Manston Processing Centre in Kent, where vaccines will now be offered after an outbreak of diphtheria. Hassan wants his family to be rehomed and for hotel residents' complaints to be resolved.
Stockport Council told us they've expressed concerns to the Home Office. They also confirmed reports of scabies at the hotel. Serco says there are currently no cases of scabies, but charities have warned infections like these are a direct result of unsuitable and cramped accommodation.
Some people in the hotel got scabies. There was a child on my floor who got scabies everywhere on their body. We were scared to get it too.
Amin is one of 6 asylum seekers living at the hotel who we've spoken to. They're being helped by the Manchester charity Rappar and all make the same claims.
Inside there are big rubbish bags everywhere. It's very disgusting and it smells as well.
Amin is a teenager. He and his family fled their home country when war broke out. He says hotel staff have added to their traumas.
The way staff treat us there is awful. Sometimes if you do something wrong, they shout at us and they scare us.
You and your family fled a war zone. How does it make you feel coming here and living in conditions like that?
It makes me feel sad. All we want is for the government to deal with our asylum cases quickly and put us in suitable accommodation. But now it feels like we live in a kind of open prison.
Serco strongly refutes the claims made by the people we spoke to. The Home Office said it will work to address concerns at asylum accommodation. For those at this Stockport hotel, the wait for asylum claims to be processed and new lives to begin goes on. Will Tullis, ITV News, Stockport.
OK, coming up on the programme.
We catch up with Tasha Jonas, who's having some much-needed downtime after her win at the weekend.
And how one City superfan got the surprise of his life at his weekly training session.
Next tonight, we're continuing with our coverage of the cost of living crisis on a day when inflation hit a 40-year high of 11.1%.
Yeah, that's a staggering figure. The jump has been driven by higher energy bills and more expensive food, with the price of staples like milk and pasta soaring.
And among the many who say they're hard-pressed are our region's farmers. Emma Sweeney has this special report.
Breakfast, as they say, is the most important meal of the day. But in recent months, the cost of that food for both humans and livestock alike has risen sharply.
Everything in the chain, the feed supply chain has gone up, the fuel, the drivers, wages, everything else. There's been drought, war, and then, just to give an example, feed for these cows that are behind me has gone from $380 roughly a tonne, £400 a tonne to £600 a tonne. And that's a massive rise. Fuel has gone up from 60 pence to £1.10. It's all plateauing, but it's certainly not coming down.
Up until now, organic dairy farmer Ian Pye has managed to meet his rising costs, but he fears things could be about to change.
I just fear that with the cost of living crisis, the supermarkets are going to start putting pressure on farmers to reduce the price that we get paid, but we can't absorb that cost. We've just nowhere to absorb it, and I just fear that we're going to end up with empty shelves because farmers will leave the industry if prices come down.
Elsewhere in the industry, more cracks are beginning to appear. Many egg farmers are in disputes with supermarkets over the price of their produce. Sarah in Cheshire supplies directly to the local community, and this means she could raise her prices, but she's reluctant to do so.
The cost of production has increased massively over the last 12 months, and we have made the choice to absorb those costs in the hope that in the long run we can still continue with our vision of serving the community with affordable, nutrient-dense food.
For poultry farmers, the recent outbreak of avian flu is yet another burden. It's led to millions of birds being killed or culled in the last 12 months. And with Christmas just around the corner, there are concerns over supplies. In some supermarkets, the cost of a turkey has risen by a third. But one well-known chain says it's determined to help those who are struggling the most.
We're not going to move the price now on turkeys to the end of the year. Lots of our competitors are and will, but we're confident of our availability because we can stockpile, we can freeze, you can book a free Christmas delivery slot, but also get a guaranteed turkey.
Iceland may well be willing to take the hit with turkey dinners, but food price inflation is now at a 45-year high. When it comes to the trimmings, customers everywhere are likely to feel the pinch.
If you look at things like veg, which you might be serving with your turkey, prices of veg have gone up by almost 14% over the last year. And if you look at things like milk and eggs and butter, they've gone up by a staggering 24% over the last year. So these are the extra costs which families are going to be looking to try to meet over the Christmas period.
Now, with consumers getting less for their money at traditional stores, many of them are turning to food banks or, as in the case here in Altrincham, to community grocers. For just £7.50 a week, members get bags of surplus food from supermarkets, manufacturers and farmers.
This time last year, we were oversubscribed by, say, 700 members every week, but that's closer to 3,000 this week, same time. So, yeah, we're really feeling the pinch. We're seeing people that are teaching assistants, nurses, carers, people that are doing exactly the right thing, getting a job and trying to actually earn that living, but it's just not touching the sides. They need that help.
And with prices continuing to rise, that need is unlikely to fade. But many farmers say they too need help and warn that if things continue as they are, the wheels of industry may grind to a halt and the face of British farming could change for good. Emma Sweeney, ITV News.
Yeah, the cost of living crisis continues. Here's what's still to come on the ITV News at 6:30 with Mary.
Coming up on the programme, millions feel the squeeze as prices just keep on rising. With inflation topping 11%, we'll ask if it's finally peaked. Also ahead.
This is anti-bullying week. Will he apologise?
The Deputy Prime Minister under fire after 2 formal complaints of bullying are made against him.
I'm confident I behaved professionally throughout and look forward to transparently addressing any claims that have been made.
And find out why there are so few eggs on supermarket shelves. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Well, next this evening, we are keeping up with the Jonases. What a remarkable year it's been for Liverpool boxer Natasha Jonas, who started 2022 with no world titles and ends it with 3.
Yeah, after capturing her 3rd belt at the weekend, she's now enjoying some downtime with her family. And as David Chisnell found out, she's not the only one with a sporting talent.
Yeah, you do it. Yeah.
In boxing, she's a 3-belt world champion, but at home, Natasha Jonas is just another member of the family.
You're disturbing the film, still disturbing the process.
The Liverpool boxer beat Canadian Marie-Eve Decaire in Manchester on Saturday to become the WBC, WBO and IBF super welterweight champion and round off the perfect year.
I don't think I've had a year like 2022 in my whole boxing career, and I've been boxing for 17 years now. And now I'm just in my nan's chilling with everybody and enjoying the moment, because everything that I go through in camp, these go through it with me. These see the ugly side to the sport. It's not always, smiles and good times. There's tough times too, and these go through it with me. So it's nice to come back and just chill and appreciate the journey that we've been on.
Seeing her as a young lady growing up and being what she's achieved, and it's just phenomenal, brilliant work, and a younger generation is following her in different arts and different sports, so that's great to see.
Welcome to the family. Over here we've got a British and World Championship bodybuilder, Marcel. We've got my uncle Harris, who's represented karate.
Well, Natasha isn't the only talented member of her family, and keeping up with the Jonases isn't easy, especially when you're one of them.
We are a huge family, but we're very close. And obviously we're full of competitors. Our Casey, who plays for Everton females under 14s, I think it's every Jonas kid's dream to beat a Jonas adult, and that's why we keep developing so many athletes. She had a broken arm. He ended up on the floor.
With that will to win so strong in her family, competitiveness has been known to spill over.
We decided to have a game of football, adults versus kids, obviously. The adults, yeah, we showed them a thing or two. I mean, there may be some questionable tackles, but we stayed in that park for a good 2-3 hours. People were watching us, laughing in awe that we just carried on. But that's the thing, it's togetherness, we are competing, but it's the love, it's the, expressing yourself and being who you want to be.
The foundation for Natasha's success comes from her nan, the matriarch of her family. She has 10 children, 38 grandchildren and 39 great-grandchildren. With that huge number comes huge support.
I've only ever known this house, so it's been important for me growing up as a kid, the area that we're from, Toxteth, the community that we're from, and obviously my nan's a big part of that, Obviously the support of my family and the network that I've got, I wouldn't be able to do it without them.
After a busy year, Natasha is now planning a relaxing end to 2022. She'll be going on holiday and spending more time with the family as she gets refreshed and ready for another big year of boxing. David Chisnell, ITV News, Liverpool.
Well, Natasha's nan's done a very good job, hasn't she?
What an incredible family, and so talented as well.
I wouldn't stand a chance.
I love the football matches chat as well, because everybody knows when you have football matches with your family members, there's always dubious tackles that go in the mix. Always. At least in my family anyway.
Now, a lot of you will have written fan mail to your idols, perhaps when you were much younger. Did you have any childhood heroes?
Yeah, mine was definitely Mr. T. I pity the fool. What about you?
I wrote to Madness, they never wrote back.
Well, for 12-year-old Finlay Fisher, there was just one man to write to, his favourite footballer, Jack Grealish. Finlay has cerebral palsy, a condition that Grealish's sister, Holly, also has, and he wanted to thank him personally for the support he gives to those with disabilities.
He wrote a letter to the City striker hoping for a reply, but he got much more than that, as Jamal Williams-Thomas reports.
Hello, Finlay, my mate. How are you? You okay? You alright?
Yeah.
It's not every day that you get to meet your footballing hero, but for 11-year-old Finlay Fisher, that dream became a reality.
I didn't actually believe it. I had to look again to see. So when he walked out, it was just mind-blowing that he actually came to see me.
Finley has cerebral palsy, and after learning that Jack Grealish's sister Holly has the same condition, he felt compelled to write a letter.
To Jack, my name is Finley and I am 11 years old. I am a huge Man City and England fan. I wish there were more people in the world just like you who treat people with disabilities the same as anyone else. It makes me really happy when I see you, a famous footballer, know what it's like to live with people with cerebral palsy.
A letter to which he got a reply from the man himself.
Dear Finley, thank you so much for sending me this letter. As you will see, it's a letter that made me smile from start to finish. The most important thing about football is playing with a smile on your face. There's no need to get frustrated, lose your temper or get upset, because as long as you try your best and enjoy it, that is all that matters. He treats people who aren't the same, not the same, but don't have the same needs as everyone else, so he really includes everyone.
Every week, Finley attends a session at the Manchester City Academy that caters for disabled children, and he has been somewhat of a star there since meeting Jack.
Oh, he's been on cloud nine all week, absolutely loving it, updating us with how many followers he's got and, all this. Yeah, he's been definitely loving the attention, definitely.
City do so much for the kids in the community. They are amazing, and they just give them so much confidence and boost them up. They always ask them, how have you done at school? The care, it's amazing.
Although the session is enjoyed by many, the feeling is more strides have to be taken with disability and football.
I think in terms of disability, I think we learn a lot in the last few years, particularly in how to adapt to the game to make it accessible. Just because they're in a wheelchair doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to play football. And as far as these young people are concerned, they play for Man City.
Whilst Finley carries on scoring goals here in Manchester, he hopes Jack Grealish can bag a few of his own in Qatar. Jamal Williams-Thomas, ITV News, Manchester.
And let us just say a huge happy birthday to Finley and his twin sister Izzy. They're turning 12 today.
Time for a look at the weather. Here's James.
Why do I need a shower? I've been out in the rain.
The faster you go, the sooner you'll be out. You'll save water too.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Hi there, good evening. Not a bad day today, some good sunny spells out there. Tomorrow, very much different as this low pressure system heads towards us. It's going to keep corkscrewing wet weather in our direction. And you'll also notice that there will be more unsettled spells as we head through the weekend. Also notice the splash of blue on the chart. Temperatures much closer to where we'd expect at this time of year. Through the evening, then we'll see a few showers, and then eventually by around midnight, this rain band starts to show its hand. At first, not quite really reaching the coast, but that yellow warning is in force for pretty much the whole of tomorrow, affecting the southern half of our patch. As far as amounts of rain are concerned, 30 to 40 millimetres quite widely, possibly 70 to 80 millimetres up on higher ground. You notice that Isle of Man there gets away with a dry night on the whole, and then tomorrow it'll eventually pick up rain, but really the focus is across mainland and lots of wet weather, as I say, some heavy bursts in there and some stronger winds, particularly around the coast, getting rather gusty and blustery. Temperature-wise, 9 or 10 Celsius, not that you'll notice it, it's pretty much irrelevant, but of course that is much closer to where you'd expect at this time of year. As for Friday, well, that low pressure system stays very, very close to us, but all we'll see really is this feed of showers down through the Cheshire Gap, so quite a few heavy ones potentially, but a little more hit and miss than the rain tomorrow. Highs again 10 Celsius. Good news is we get a little bit of a break on Saturday morning, a chilly, frosty start potentially, and then later on in the day a bit more cloud, and then this rain band moves across us overnight, and it's back to showers on Sunday.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Thanks, James. I'm back with the late news just after 11 o'clock.
Tomorrow we'll bring you reaction to the Chancellor's autumn statement and try to gauge what all of that means for us in the Northwest. Many thanks indeed for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.